Hey everyone, how you guys doing? Anyone hungover? Yeah, that sounds about right. So we're here to talk about an equitable future for music streaming. Obviously, we love our music streaming. We love being able to discover all this amazing music. But I am joined today in conversation with Just Blaze, who is a legend.
Yeah,
Meh.
depends on who you ask.
I mean, I think so. I think I have a pretty good opinion. I don't know. But yeah, I think we'll start off with how streaming came about. And I'm not sure if many of you guys know, but I think initially streaming came about as a way to kind of fight piracy during the era of like Napster and like MP3s and torrents and things like that. And I think on top of that too, we also see that it was, access to digital distribution and building options outside of iTunes. So I'm really curious for you, just, if you can describe what music was like, music distribution in the industry prior to music streaming and how it felt like during when they're transitioning and how you feel about it now.
It's a loaded question.
I know.
It was different, obviously. We had the concept of hand-to-hand hustling, right? Selling records out of your trunk. I'm still curious, or I'm still trying to figure out, like, what is the modern day equivalent of that?
TikTok? I don't know. It's not. It's different. I think everyone has an opportunity now to hustle for themselves in a way that isn't like being on the street selling your CDs, out of the back of your car. Now you can go online and self-promote, but at the same time, there is this more equal playing field in terms of access, but not in terms of being heard, because it's a lot more competitive. Everyone makes music. I'm pretty sure everyone here knows how to DJ or make music to some capacity, maybe on your phone. But in terms of getting someone to listen, that has become more difficult.
That's the hard part, or the harder part.
Yes.
We used to, not that I ever did this, but you used to be able to just sit outside the record label with a CD and wait for somebody to actually pay attention to you. If they saw that you had been out there, for days and days and days waiting. Nowadays, it can be very much like screaming into the void or just yelling into the matrix with nobody listening.
Exactly. There's this there's pros and cons to every situation, right? We can't really go back to that era. No. It doesn't work. But when we see how there is this opportunity for a person that isn't close to a record label to be able to now somehow reach them, it gives you that slight chance. But then again, you're screaming to a void. It's so highly flooded. And how do you have someone hear you? But for you, in terms of how it was, then did you feel any pressure or strife when not music streaming, but like illegal MP3 downloading? By the way, I totally had Napster. I totally downloaded so much illegal music when I was like in middle school and all that, But
damn, middle school?
I mean,
I'm old. Nah, to be honest, I don't necessarily have all the answers for it, but like, I embraced those advances in technology for one reason, or for two reasons. A, the art that I created was being shared on a wider platform. And B, it made my DJ sets better, because I'd be right there downloading music that I couldn't get on vinyl too.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, you've always been really progressive in terms of technology and music, and you always have your ear on the ground in terms of even up and coming music and up and coming technology.
Right.
So it's really interesting to hear your perspective, since you've been around prior and you're making like huge hits with like Jay-Z and Cameron and like all the Dipset. Like, I mean, when I mean legend, you guys, legend. But R.I.P. It's okay, whatever. But even though you're really progressive, people in the industry that like, some of the older cats are really salty about like, I'm not getting my bag anymore.
Right.
What was some of the what were some of the conversations you're having with other artists that were not happy about like Napster and illegal downloading?
To be honest, we never really discussed it much. It was like I think I just come from an era where, or I shouldn't say that. Oh, I can't say that. I come from an era where a lot of my contemporaries were more so concerned with just making sure that they were still outside and relevant, right? Mm-hmm. And didn't really like, for them it was like, it's weird because I grew up in an era where, you know, you got paid for buying albums and CDs and whatnot. But I kind of really like started to come to prominence when people were starting to treat music as the commercial, right?
Yeah.
For the show or for the merch or whatever else. And I'm very conflicted on it because it's like, on one hand, I want to be paid for my art, right? Mm-hmm. On the other, I want it to be, as artists, we want it to be shared and appreciated by people.
Exactly. And now we've entered the next evolution of that, which is people actually are not getting paid pretty much anything, but it can be shared with everyone.
Right.
So that leads to where we are now and the constant conversation about how do you get heard and how do you get paid? Because now you don't, like, both of them are hard. Everyone has an opportunity, but it's like so slim. And we see the introduction of AI. I actually really like AI technology in music, and I think that it's a very powerful tool. I think with all AI, we don't have to talk about it. I know you guys have heard this conversation. Like, everyone's talking about AI over and over and over again, but, you know, responsible use, blah, 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 you know. And, but at the same time, a lot of the music industry is really concerned about a lot of like AI music being like further flooding a very flooded market. I'm kind of curious what you think about all of that too.
I mean, it's all tools, right?
Yeah.
Like, AI is great in the right hands. It's very dangerous in the wrong hands. And we've seen evidence of both, right? For me personally, I don't know. Like, what happens when somebody just goes to their AI app and says, you know, make a TOKiMONSTA type beat?
Let's see him try.
Or it says make a Just Blaze beat. Or actually, I've even seen situations, or have been part of situations where somebody talks into an algorithm and then the song is generated, right? Like, what do we do with that? Who do we attribute that to? That, whatever it is that the intelligence is creating, it was generated or it was fed.
It's generated and it's derivative, right? Because that intelligence is coming from a culmination of like mass knowledge that exists out there. And it's interesting because some of these AI tools, there's specific AI tools for producers that are really great, like, you know, coming up with new chords or instruments or melody ideas. And then there are the products that create songs. My friend did use one recently to make a special birthday song for another friend. It was about snacks. And you can write the genre, and it has a vocalist, lyrics, and a beat. It was not that good. But at the same time, this is only the beginning. So you wonder, have you ever tried feeding into any of these like AI models make a just beat?
No, I've actually never tried one. Like, I've never have. I should, though.
We'll try later.
Well, let's do it.
Yeah, I'm curious too. I tried doing it once with one of mine. It was so bad. And I was like, do I sound like this? I hope not. But some of the AI tools are actually preventing you from using names of artists. So that is interesting. But again, this topic has been covered, I'm sure, a lot here and beyond. When we think about streaming, let's think about streaming as exposure, right? So you have kids trying to beat the algorithm using things like TikTok. Right. And even though this is slightly off subject, I think we should also discuss the idea of creativity and how it's being affected by music streaming and digital platforms, where, I don't know if you feel this, when I see younger producers now, they want to just beat the algorithm. Right. That is their exposure.
We used to call it tricking the game.
Yeah, and how do you think that affects creativity then?
Well, I feel like it personally, and I know everybody that views music or views music differently. For me, it makes it more disposable, which I don't like. You know, when I was younger, and I hate to say things like this because you sound like the old man yelling into the cloud, right? But actually, it's not even just when I was younger. Even now, like I appreciate music and I feel music differently, right? So like I want to see the liner notes. I want to know who did what and where the mics were placed, and you know, what did they use to record it? Like it's very much like an investment for me personally, right?
Yeah.
So in my conversations with younger artists, they're just like, all right, I'm gonna put this record out this week. I'm putting this one out next week, and like their rollout plan is not a body of work; it's just content.
Yeah, singles.
And which is fine because I mean we originated from a singles based industry. You know, like back in that's why we had 45s. It was just nobody really put out albums. They just 45s. So it's cool, but I just feel like there's because music is more disposable now, it's almost like fast food, right? And I think because of that, because people always, or because content is, or because songs are treated as content, it's just like, oh, I'll put out another one next week. Oh. Whereas, you know, you can treat it as a commercial, like we were saying earlier, or you can really just put your heart into it. And I feel like there's, over time, you know, the cream always rises, right? Yeah. Eventually, those who really do it because they love it, because it's their life and their lifeblood, many of them generally eventually, you know, rise to the top. But it's just so much harder to fight through it because everybody has the means to create content now.
Absolutely. It's this democratization of music, which is beautiful because now, you know, back in the day, if you didn't have the money to have a guitar or like a tape deck or a means to even record music, you couldn't. And so the world's best musician might have been in 1973, but he was living in his mom's basement and didn't have a piano, you know? And I truly believe that. And we do live in a world now where, you know, someone has access to a computer, they really have the heart for it, they can make some amazing music. But then now we have to come across that economic model about streaming. And, you know, lately there's several artists that have been talking about how music has been devalued into nothing because it's being treated like content. And yet music is so integral to our daily lives, right? When we're out on the street, we hear it in a car, in the elevator, when we're sad, when we're happy. Music is so integral, and yet it's being valued less and less. And what we're seeing now is that through music streaming, current major music streaming platforms, that 70% of the revenue from these platforms are going back into the companies and not distributed to the artists. Yeah, it's kind of messed up. What do you think about that? Like the price per stream, like it is a different era, but like, should
it's
it be
wild.
that little?
But like, yeah, it's wild. I mean, you think about it, like what's the bill they're trying to pass now, where it's like they're trying to mandate artists getting a penny per stream. You know, and the fact that like that's big news is just kind of like, wow, like we are fighting to get more than 0.00003 cents.
Yeah, a
per
fraction.
stream, right? You know, it's not really. When I think about it, right, I think about like, you know, like I'm blessed because I work with some of the biggest artists in the world, right? So I'm like, there's gonna be a certain amount of income regardless.
Yeah.
In terms of residuals and publishing, and
Yeah, I
things
mean,
like
you're
that.
like a tenured musician at this point too.
Right now, but I, not to cut you off, I think about like, what if I didn't have that? What if I was an artist just starting now, right? And when you look at, you know, what streams are paying, you know, per stream throughout the, you know, the various DSPs, it's like, how could I? If I was born just 5 years later, 4 years, I might not be able to make a living doing this.
Yeah, and that's what we're seeing with a lot of young musicians today is that they're not able to live even if they have a viral song or they're heavily streamed, because it takes an immense amount of streams to equal this, like a small amount of money. So your favorite artists that you're hearing over and over again, they don't even have enough capital to then pay for their next project.
Right. Well, you know, it used to be, I shouldn't say it used to be, just in general, it's like when you receive income, you want to go invest back in yourself and keep building your brand. But what's happened, like you were saying, you know, back in the day, when I was young, it was like a $10,000 investment just to be able to even have to be able to try to make a record, right? It was either, you know, unless you had somebody that was paying for it, or paying for access to a studio, rather. If you wanted to do it in your house, an MPC, or an ASR, or an SP1200, whatever, was X amount of money, and you needed mixer, you needed monitors. Like it was a minimum, like $7,500 to $10,000 investment. The beauty now is that somebody who doesn't have the ability to make that $10,000 investment has an iPhone or an iPad that they can just go and make a record on. At the same time, when you give so many people that access, you start to clog up the, you're gumming up the works, right?
Yeah. What I love about streaming is I have been able to discover so many amazing new artists in that way. It's like some of these streaming platforms have been the biggest A&Rs. But when we think about things that are algorithmic like that, like I'm getting fed, like there's some artists that I saw yesterday I would not have known about if it hadn't popped up in some kind of algorithm for me. But for every artist that pops up through an algorithm, what about all these artists that don't have that are even better? And it's like in the music industry, even on a subtle level, your music is getting pushed into this algorithm one way or another. If you're lucky, you just made a good song and it gets viral, it gets pushed in it. But otherwise, there are behind the scenes people there pushing, whether it's a label services, etc. And so we are given this illusion of a democratized system that like everyone has a fair chance. That kind of not really, you know, it's still labels and industry pushing a different kind of machine. So
yeah. No, I've seen that. Like we're not here to blow up people's spots, but like I've watched this situation where it's like the public thinks that this artist just happened to upload a song and it went viral and went 5 million plays on TikTok and blah, 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 blah. And it's like there was still a label behind it, or you know, a company behind it pushing the buttons.
Yeah.
Like but what happens is somebody believes that story and it ends up killing their art where they can't find a way to replicate that success that they perceived or that they thought was happening, even though it was actually a lie that was just fed to them.
It's different types of marketing. Obviously, the old music industry, if we think back to like the Beatles or whatever, the industry, the labels had so much power over these artists. You know, they owned people's catalogs, et cetera, et cetera. And so we have this shifted future where a lot of us now own our IP, we own our music, or we try to do that, or labels have also come around where they realize they can't do these deals where they like own someone's catalog for forever and ever. So it's kind of come around also in that way. I mean, with the music that you're making now, do you think that the deals are more fair than the music that you're making like before?
To be honest, I am in a position where I don't, like, my deal is my deal, right?
True.
Like, so it doesn't really, respectfully, it doesn't really, certain things don't affect me. But I hear about what the younger producers have to contend with now and what's in their contracts. And it's wild. Some guys just aren't getting fees anymore because labels are adopting the algorithmic exposure thing, and they're leveraging that into contracts, right? So it's just like, that's cool, but we, you know, predictive algorithms don't, or trying to predict an algorithm, something that you use as leverage in the contract, is not going to pay my rent or my mortgage at the end of the month, right? Like, we still need to be able to make a living, but there are so many different ways now to leverage the potential of going viral that people look at it as currency. but it's not currency. You can't pay your rent off a prospect or your mortgage off a prospect, right? But it's being leveraged into contracts now. I love the music industry. I love making music. I love the fact that I'm able to make a living doing what I love. But I will say I hate that the algorithm has become the new A&R.
Yeah, what are your thoughts about tastemakers? Because there was an era, let's think about like the blog era, where you would go to a website and be like, this person has excellent taste in music. These songs have been personally picked. I want to check these out. Or
Right.
even certain clubs that you'd go to, because you'd be like, oh, this club, I know that they're putting on artists that are up and coming and I trust their taste. What do you think about that in reference to like algorithmic playlists versus a personal touch?
You can't replace a personal touch. You can't replace it. You can figure out and find ways to predict what's going to go number one here on this chart or that chart. Or you can find ways to. You can always manipulate a market, but you can only manipulate people's hearts and ears. But so far, that's why we consume music is with our hearts and ears, right? Yeah. So ultimately, we'll always rise to the top. You know, the real talent will always rise to the top. But the I would love to see those tools used for or AI, you know, in general and things like that, used for a creative way. Like, for example, my good friend Beanie Siegel was shot, right, and had a collapsed lung. His voice has not been the same since. Projects like what he's doing, that can give him his voice back, right? Or DOC, same thing, giving his voice back. Like, I love seeing it used for those. I hate seeing it used to game the system and game the algorithm.
That's such an interesting perspective on other use cases for AI, right? And it is a beautiful tool. It is a complicated tool. But when we think about music streaming, like, what are things that you really like about music streaming? Because again, like, I do love this mass exposure to artists where it's like, it's almost like having a record collection of 1 billion records, right? You can find anything. You can find the most obscure, random things, genres you never knew existed.
Right.
So, like, what are some things that you've enjoyed about the streaming, just as a user and as an artist?
Instant access, and that goes both ways, right? Like, the fact that you can pay your $10 a month, right, and have access to any song you can think to search, right, or that you want to hear, and that at the same time, I can instantly share, as a creator, I can instantly share songs with you, right? Like, what was it? I put out that record, Higher, with me and Bauer. It was like 2013, 14, whatever.
Holy moly.
Old.
Time is a construct.
Yeah. That record gave me a whole new lease on life that I didn't even know I was looking for, right? And we put it out at 4 a.m, like, randomly, like, the management agents all super, what are you doing? Just putting out, and I'm like, whatever. But that record literally changed my life, right? Like, put me in touch with a whole new audience, exposed a lot of that new audience to the older records that I had done. It was just so amazing, you know. So the fact that, like, pre-streaming, I would not have been able to connect with that audience like that. I wouldn't have been able to cultivate, you know, what I did that put me in a whole different place. It literally bought my last house.
Wow. I like, everyone's like, ooh, house. Yeah, because obviously everyone, all the Gen Z is like, we'll never know what that feels like. And obviously we want to make the changes now so that, you know, we will have an equitable future for all people, all musicians, all listeners. Because, like, the fan experience is really curated, but it's an illusion of curation, right? Like, we think that we have the streaming platform, so we have access to all this music, but it is still picked. Like, you have to have the know-how to go find some kind of, you know, DSP, some kind of distributor for your music. Even if you're independent, you have to, like, there's so many different platforms that you can use. And I wonder, as much as I love streaming music and the access and the discovery, what I also enjoy is so many people are more open-minded about music. Like back in the day, they're just like, I'm a rock guy. I just listen to house. I just listen to rap. And now everyone's like, I want to listen to Aphex Twin, and then I want to listen to Taylor Swift. I'm like, I'm about it. I love that, you know? There's less of this pretension around music. It's more about like, I get it. I like it. I am exposed to it. And then you have, you know, Taylor Swift times 200 times faster, like whatever those versions that they're doing now too. And I kind of wonder what that will be. Like, what do you think the future will be for music and streaming?
Not sure.
Yeah, no, that was a really
Thanks.
vague question. I should have been more specific. Let's backtrack. As an artist, where do you think possibly that it could go? Because we know right now already that it's oversaturated. There's a lot of music out there, a lot of musicians sharing music. We know that now there's technology that will further flood the market potentially. We know that music streaming isn't paying artists enough to continue to do it as their livelihood. You know, many of the artists that you know and love, if they're streaming well, that doesn't pay their bills because it's kind of promotional, right? It's like a commercial for the artist. And if you don't tour, like if I'm in an ambient band and I'm like, no one wants to see me in concert, then how am I gonna pay my bills, even though you guys are streaming my music a lot? So do you think that there are solutions that could happen? Do you have any ideas?
If I did, we probably wouldn't be here. I really don't know. You know, it's ultimately, as long as we continue to let it happen, it's going to happen, right? Mm-hmm. And the allure or the illusion of being successful in music, which is really just like 1% of us, gets presented as, you know, the standard and what to attain for, or what to attain towards. So as long as that illusion exists, there's always going to be a flood of people trying to do the same thing, right?
Exactly. Actually, another interesting fact that I feel like a lot of people aren't aware of is a lot of major labels have back-end deals with streaming services. So
1,000%.
Yeah. So even, I guess I don't want to name names, but one of the big services, they have a pro rata share. So they kind of have a pool that they distribute to their artists. And it sounds equitable, except they had to pay an advance to all the major labels just to have those like those collections of music on their platform, whether it's like someone had to shake hands with like Warner Brothers just to get like all their music onto their platform. And so that already takes away streaming from the other individuals that are streaming on that platform. So for me personally, I think we just need to think of new models, because we can't take away streaming, because we do love streaming.
Right.
Like the act of streaming is great.
Also, just can't take the cat like out, or can't put the cat back in the bag.
No, yeah, we were already in it, right? And so we can't go backwards. So that's like not a progressive thought. Like everyone's like, well, it should be like what it used to be. It's like, no, Napster happened, LimeWire happened. We're in this era, and what can we do to just see the transition into something more equitable, so we can keep the things that we like about it while also being fair to the artists that are making the music that we love so much?
I think a lot of it is gonna, for better or worse, is gonna come down to personality and, like you were saying, you know, if I'm an ambient band, who's gonna want to come see me? Finding the ways to make people want to come see an ambient band, right? Like, it's the great equalizer.
But what about artists that don't want to tour? It's, right. You know, like...
I get it. I many times would rather not be on the road for 3 months at a time.
Same.
Right? And being away from my house or away from my family.
Yeah, I like petting my cat and watching Netflix,
right.
Sometimes more than playing a show. And the reality is a lot of your favorite musicians that make whatever kind of music, they might not be a touring artist.
Right.
And also, we would know, just because you're a good musician doesn't mean you're a good performer. Those
exactly.
are two different skills. And you want to highlight, at least for the music consumption part, like streaming or, you know, downloading lossless audio if you're a DJ. It's like you want to support that artist because they're enriching your lives. Actually, especially as a DJ, because you're playing out other people's tracks. And if they can't like pay the rent, then we can't DJ their tracks out anymore, which is actually can be our livelihood, right? So
Easy. Yeah, it's you know, ultimately, what's interesting, or for me at least, is like you'll see that like one streaming service pays X amount versus another one which pays a different amount versus another one that pays a different amount. It's like, why is there no regulation there? You know, like I can just make up how much I want to pay you and play your music, and you can't do anything about it. That's wild.
yeah, and there's still like a hierarchy in terms of these
Right.
streaming platforms because, you know, the majority of us are probably, you know, we're going to be on a Spotify. That's just a factual thing. You know, they are the biggest music streamer,
Right.
streaming service. And I love the way that it works. I love consuming all the things. I think as a musician, you're usually subscribed to like all of the different streaming services. You can sort of tell the difference between them. And I don't think that they should go away, but I do think that the industry as a whole, because the music industry and streaming services are definitely like they're holding hands, and all they have to do is really just brainstorm and think of a different way. Like we still make tons of money. Like streaming platform, it's a digital good, right? They're not even manufacturing anything, so other than tooling and engineers and marketing, they do have a lot of capital to then redistribute back to artists, you know, but how do we do that? And for me personally, I think that people haven't sat down long enough to really think of ideas because there are plenty, you know. What if we were to monetize music in a different way? What was it per stream?
Well, I was about to ask you, like, if what do you think could be done to revolutionize or change it a bit? I'm curious as to what your ideas are.
Yeah, so for me, like I co-founded a music streaming platform. I don't want to like plug it, but then in
Plug
terms
it.
of, I know, I mean the logo's right there, so it's called Sonu. The main thing is how do we monetize money in a way that actually makes you feel closer to the artist? Because that's one other thing about streaming is if I'm a fan of Just Blaze and I've been streaming your music 99% of the time and most of my $10 a month goes towards you, I would kind of want him to know. And
Right.
I think you would also kind of want to know, like, who's really spending all their time supporting me? Because I want to show them some level of gratitude or be aware for metrics or whatever kind of artist that you are.
Right. Yeah, no, it's I mean, ultimately, you know, you look at like some artists who've been very successful, right? Over the years, it's like a Jay or somebody, right? Where it's like they might not sell, you know, a zillion or 10 million albums right away, right? But it's like every time they come outside, you get that one solid million or 2 million people that always come in, you know, in the old era, but bought your record, right? And that was really because they either identified with you somehow, or they aspired to be like you, or there was a connection. And that, to me, that connection is probably the most valuable form of currency we have in this business, is building that connection. Because when you have that connection with your audience,
Yeah.
they will always find ways to support you.
Exactly, that loyalty, that connection. Truly, when you make music as an artist, there is some vulnerable part of you that is going into that song. Whether you're making something sensitive or you're making like a banger, you are giving a part of you into that. And if you have a listener that resonates with that sound, something unspoken is related. Like you and that listener, you guys have something that's aligned. And when you have metrics or ways of then rewarding your fans or showing them some level of gratitude, I think that's something to leverage in terms of how to then change the economic model for music streaming or music in general. It's like maybe the price per stream is a fraction of a cent, but if I was a huge fan of Just Blaze, maybe I can find another way to support him or support the song. You know, maybe it's about going to a show, but that's not paying for the music, because I love watching him perform, but really I like his beats, right? And if we can think about ways to maybe create additions, create ways to be like, okay, I like this Just Blaze beat, I want to buy into this beat, I'll be able to stream it for free anyways, because like I already pay a monthly fee, but I want to do something different that then goes directly to you and that you see it. And we have these Patreon models that exist, but that's also different, and it's not catered towards the music industry.
No, one of the things that I have been saying to a lot of artists trying to figure out ways to, make an impact, but also be able to make a living. One of the things that I say is just, one of the ideas that I always give them is you make the version that's going to go on iTunes or, or Spotify or Tidal or whatever. But then there's an alternate version that you can only access like via, Bandcamp or something that's more direct to artists, right? Because ultimately, you don't want to fight the streaming model. You don't want to like remove your music from the platforms that can help, give you exposure and generate streams. But for those who care enough to maybe like want the physical product, right? Like press it on vinyl, add 5 extra tracks that you can only get if you buy the vinyl. You know what I mean? Or or that you can consume by alternate methods as opposed to just streaming. You got to if you want people to go the extra mile to support you, you got to give them a reason to.
Exactly. So there's the artist's responsibility to find a new way to have your fans connect to you, your listeners connect to you. And then I do think that there's a responsibility on these massive music streaming platforms because they know what they're doing. They know how much money they're paying out. They're fully aware of the economic models. So what I'm seeing right now is the surgence of new streaming platforms, new ways that like another generation of music industry people are trying to problem solve this inequality. Because the saddest thing for me is if my favorite artists can't support themselves, they'll never make the music I love again. They're gonna go back to flipping burgers or working a corpo job that they hate. And it's unfortunate because they had every opportunity to be a successful musician if the ecosystem was fair for them. And I hope that I encourage everyone here to really think about this. Moving forward, what can we do to support these musicians that we love? Because if we don't support them, they won't be around for longer. And I think for someone like Just and even myself, I kind of made it like right before like music streaming and TikTok era. Like the TikTok era, those producers feeding into that, I feel the most for them because of the algorithm, like how do we like game the system and how much content do I have to put out so that one of these songs will hit and become viral. And the music industry also has that crazy payment lag because it takes a long time to get paid. You guys see his face. Yeah.
No, going back to what you said about, the TikTok model and this, how music is being created now. It's interesting because you're creating art with the intention of going viral, right? It's like, how can we go viral? And at the same time, I can't be mad at it, right?
Yeah, it's like people saying like, "Oh, I want this to be a platinum hit." It's
right. It's the modern day equivalent.
But a platinum hit used to pay you a lot more money.
This is true.
But it was also a closed system with the industry, so it's complicated. I think right now is that the democratization of music and becoming a musician, I love that part of it. I love the access to music. I love how open-minded music streaming has made people. I just think that the money component is like, it's a little rough, like if I think about us, if I had to be on TikTok in the beginning of my career, I don't know if anyone would like me anymore.
I wouldn't have had a career.
Yeah, like sometimes you don't want to know that much about your heroes. There's some musicians on TikTok now, and I'm like, I don't think I wanted to know that about you.
Right.
Yeah, like when you give someone a platform outside of the music that you love, and you're like, oh, it turns out it's kind of like, it's not like a good dude.
I didn't need to know that about you.
Yeah, I didn't need to know that about you, Or like mundane things. It's like, I love your music, but I don't need to see your breakfast, And so, like, because musicians are good at making music, not good at being a performer or doing dances or whatever it is. So I feel like the younger generation of musicians also feel like they now have to be this personality and like watch my music producing like process, or watch me make a list of the 5 favorite songs that I've made. I don't know, whatever, you know.
Not everything needs to be shared, but that's kind of where we are now, right?
Yeah.
It's a gift and a curse. Like I said, like on one hand, you want people to be invested in you and who you are as a person, and you know, at the same time, the way you have to share that now is different, right?
Yeah.
So like you said, I can watch, you know, a bunch of videos about the characteristics of this particular compressor, right? But for everybody doing a review of the compressor itself, there's 20 other videos of, let me share the story of how I got this compressor, or how I learned about it, or how I, you know, the journey that I took, the 5-hour car trip.
Yeah,
right?
it's also 5 parts. It'll be part 1, then part 2, then part
Yeah.
3, and then you're like, well, I guess I'm gonna watch all of them, but then where did my time go? I didn't even get the compressor, you know? And, you know, again, you know, when we refer to like certain kinds of like social, because there's social media platforms, which is different than music streaming, but technically you're supposed to be getting royalties if songs are on social media, right? But then that's also
Yeah.
another issue going on right now, where some people aren't getting paid.
Yeah, but I think, didn't they do something where a lot of the social media platforms have to pay a certain amount out to publishers per year, blanketly?
Maybe.
Is that?
He says yes.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's, how do you rate that, right? Like, it's like bars and nightclubs that pay their yearly thing to the publishers, right? Because they're featuring music.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's like, how does that get broken up? You know, like, do I get paid the same thing that this one gets paid? This one, is it a split thing? Nobody really knows about that, to my knowledge. Like, everybody that I've ever asked about that, nobody has the answer.
I
to how
have
that
no
breaks down.
idea. Anyone else? No. It's a lot of these deals happen behind closed doors, and we only get the surface level of how that
Exactly.
works. And it's enough to appease people because it seems like something fair is happening, but really there's still some level of, I don't want to say inequality, but you know, it's like all it is just give people kind of what they deserve. And if they're making a lot of music that you love, I think the financial model should reflect that.
Right.
Yeah. But it's still a bright and wonderful future, you guys. You know, I don't want to make it sound like it's a downer. I just think that like we are the people to come up with like a new solution so we can have the thing that we love, like have the streaming and all the things about it that are lovely, and then just like, you know, like pay artists, the musicians a little bit more, you know. And yeah, because like radio is not really a thing anymore.
No.
Now it's playlisting.
Right. Well, you know, algorithms, and I said algorithms are the new A&R. I forgot about the playlist. Yeah. Right. Like the playlist generation is really the new curation.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, playlists, because playlists can also be algorithmic, and sometimes they're put together, you know, by a person. However, behind all these major playlists is usually some music industry hand holding.
1,000%. It always is.
So if you ever look at some of these playlists and you're like, oh, that's a pop artist, that person is on a major. Yeah, you know, again, a lot of the streaming platforms and the major labels had to do a handshaky deal and pay each other a certain amount. So they're kind of in it together. And so when you're an independent artist and you think you can make it, you might not. And a lot of the younger the younger viral musicians, they get picked up pretty quick by some major label too. And then that's how you can see them kind of make it if they're able to follow that viral hit, which is difficult. But what do you, any last? Yeah, we're going to take some questions.
Yeah. I think we should probably we only got about 10 minutes left.
Yeah,
We should probably do it.
questions. Let's go off. I think.
Okay.
Oh, wait, I'm. Someone said about silent questions, and it'll show up here. Okay. Do you want to?
question to you though is the dependence on that a problem, or should we have a good split of physical and streaming to have a proof of performance, or should I try to be the best streamer or best streaming numbers? Where should I go? Because that's what industry is going. You got to have the numbers, or should I do both?
That's super interesting because that's right. Hard ticket sales, a lot of people do become really viral and no one shows up and wants to buy hard tickets because they don't have enough history in the market performing. And it must be a balance of the two, right? Like when you see certain artists, you're like, I love their music and they've built up a live performance that's worth going to. But yeah, you're right. A lot of it is like, I might follow this person on a social media account, but I'm not going to go watch them actually perform.
It kind of goes back to what I was saying, where it's like, do people like your song, or do they like you?
Yeah.
Because as one thing that streaming has made more apparent, or made it easier to recognize, is, do people like you or your song, right? Like, think about it. This guy has, the most streams here, the most streams there, whatever. He puts out, or has a ton of views. And as soon as that song has run its course, or that video's run its course, it's just stop, right? Or, like you said, they have a zillion streams, but 10 people show up to the show. I think one of the key things, for better or worse these days, is that you kind of have to, it's not just about making the music anymore, right?
Yeah.
You kind of have to, you're selling your art as well as yourself, like it or not.
Yeah, it's this cycle with music releases and touring. So you need the music for people to then buy tickets to your show, but you need the money from your performances to help fund your album. And that's where it's slightly upside down in a way, where it's like the music is almost promotional. However, we're seeing that I want to see musicians live that have a body of music. And that goes back to what you were talking about earlier about albums, bodies of music, something where when they're up there for an hour, they have an hour's worth of music I want to see being performed. And right now you might have 1 million, 2 million followers and one viral song that has 100 billion streams on a social media or on a streaming platform, but they don't have a body of work yet. They haven't earned my respect enough to buy a hard ticket.
It's not really going to be a fun show. They have one song.
And then the sped up version of that song.
Right. Well, right.
Yeah.
So it's like you're paying X amount of money for a ticket to a 60-minute show. What they're gonna do the fast version and the slow version, and the fast version and the slow version, over and over and over again.
It's gonna be them doing one song and then a DJ on for about 50 minutes. Yeah. We've all been to those.
Yes, I've gotten those calls, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I wanted to see this artist. Oh, okay, that was 10 minutes. Okay, cool.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's again, these are all things that all these things that we're discussing. The one part of what kind of is unfortunate about it is these thoughts, these situations. These are informing creatives' thoughts. When they go to make a record, it's not just about making something you want to make. It's about going in to try to tick off all these boxes to be successful.
Absolutely. Ooh, questions. Okay, what's the economic model for Sony that sets it apart from other platforms? So for the company that I'm a part of, basically, we are allowing you to stream the music as much as you like without having to pay a monthly, you just need to log in. But we're monetizing other forms. So it's if you want to buy lossless, that goes into a reward pool. If you want to buy editions of a song, almost like a vinyl record, that goes into this reward pool. And that reward pool, which is bolstered with many forms of income or sources of revenue, is then distributed to all the artists on the streaming platform pro rata. So if Beyonce is bringing in 80% of the total streams, she will get 80% of that pool, but then the rest of that is distributed to everyone equally, pro rata per their percentage streamed. And that ends up being more equitable than the current model, which is 0.004%. It's very little. Oh, 3. See? So that's just a solution that I've come up with my team that we think is equitable. And also, I would just encourage everyone here, if you find good economic models that support the musicians that you believe in, I would say to do your part to support these musicians, to really go and support streaming platforms that do that. It doesn't have to be mine, but should be a good one. Another question is, in the age of the attention economy, songs are getting shorter to compete in a saturated market. What place do you see for traditional electronic production now?
You gonna give me that one?
I mean,
No, I'm messing with you.
yeah.
No, it's. I mean, we come from originally, going back to the market of the 50s and 60s. It was 2-minute songs. We're kind of like back where we started. Think about it. Your average 45, which is how music was distributed back then, was 2 minutes 45 seconds. I actually am a fan of shorter songs because it's like, get to the point, right? At the same time, as a DJ, as somebody who appreciates music, as a producer and a DJ, you appreciate the art and the extended version. I think there's a market for both.
Yeah, I like the radio edit and extended version. Now, but it's interesting because the radio edits are typically under 2 minutes and 45 seconds now. That's what they're encouraging.
I think now it's like 2 minutes now.
Yeah, it's like short. But then the extended version obviously is then 7 minutes. So you're like, what is the in between? Right. But yeah, with a lot of electronic production, it's, I don't know. It's kind of up to the individual to figure out what works best for them. But typically what people are doing now is 2 versions. There is like a radio edit that's very short, and that respectfully belongs on radio. It needs to be shorter, and then there's like a DJable. Is that a word? DJable version that you can then download to put in your sets.
Yeah, because it all in terms of DJing, it also depends on how you play, right? Like, there are times when I just want to get right to the point of that particular record, right? And then there's times when you want to take people on a journey.
True.
Sometimes you want to get right to the point, and that's why the radio edit is key, or your cue points.
Exactly.
It's but there's also something to be said for like the 12-inch version that you pause, that you just can put on and vibe out to. Or if you're playing like an extended set, you can really just get busy with. Sometimes as a DJ, it's not just about the songs you play, it's how you play them. Right?
Exactly. It's the journey, not the destination.
Exactly.
Next question is, what's the role of music collectors these days?
I don't know.
The word of mouth sharing, because when there's a song that you really love, you're gonna hit that share button and try to text it to your friends and be like, check out this song. Right. So there's still a word of mouth component to collecting music, even though collecting is now putting on a playlist.
Yeah, see, that's why it's
self-curation.
It's so much more about your personal identity, and what you want to piece together, and that's a hard one for me because it's just what I've always done anyway. You know what I mean? Like, that's how folks like you and myself got here. It's just we collect and love and appreciate music.
Yeah, we only make music because we love music,
Right.
Let's see this next question. What do you think about artists teasing their songs before release? What would you recommend to get more streams from this type of marketing?
Me personally, the art is I'm conflicted about it, right? Because ultimately the art is made to be consumed, shared, loved, and appreciated, right? At the same time, you can't just willy-nilly share everything for free and not have any kind of business model.
Yeah.
Right?
There's so many strategies. Like people will tease, and then people want to be more disruptive. So they'll be like, "Let me drop an album out of like nowhere."
nowhere,
yeah.
right.
And then you're like, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you need like a long lead time. The great thing about the modern era of digital distribution is like, if you really wanted to drop an album tomorrow, you really could. And you don't have to wait on record labels that take some of those lead times are like really, really long with the traditional label. Like by the time your album comes out, you're already on to new stuff. So
Well, because a lot of those timelines are drawn up for economic or financial reasons, not for creative reasons.
yeah,
right? So
absolutely.
it's just like Hollywood, where it's like you set to put out a movie on this particular date or weekend or whatever, but then you find out that the new such and such movie is coming out that same weekend. Now you have to move it, right?
Yeah.
So they're decisions made on finances versus creative output, but at the same time, it's a business.
True.
Okay.
I think we're getting a little short on time, but if you're asking in terms of whether there should be more equitable streaming or more selective streaming platforms, I think there's room for both. Jess?
Yeah. Here's the thing. You. That's kind of what I was saying earlier. You can't don't make creative decisions based on the financial ramifications, right? We still got to create from here first.
Yeah, for the platforms themselves, I think there could be, the platform that does everything, and then there's a platform that's more selective, but I think both of them still have to be equitable, because even if you have a more selective streaming platform, they still have to pay the people on their streaming platform equitably. I think we're done.
Yeah.
But if you guys want to ask us questions afterwards, we might be around.
All right.
I don't know, or not, I don't know. We'll find out.